And so, good morning. Mm. There are many ways that we can get lost in this unfolding. And it is so important to have a deep, acute awareness in every moment so that we don't get lost in all of the ways that we can possibly hide within conceptual ideas of spirituality, conceptual ideas of non-duality, conceptual ideas of freedom. Because freedom is wholeness. True freedom is wholeness. And wholeness includes everything. It has to, right? If there is anything that we are not free in and from, then we have this incredibly graced opportunity to find out what is the offering and opportunity in that place, in that reaction. Life itself is the grace and the guide. Life itself is offering us everything that is needed to know the wholeness that we are and to come to a depth of integrated freedom. As we speak, we're speaking really of freedom from the mind, where the stories and narratives of the mind cannot hold us captive, right? But in order to come to this depthful freedom, we have to be able to face the mind. We have to be able to face every single fiber of what we are, what we imagine that we are, what we're not. We have to be able to face it all in order to recognize the wholeness and the peace and the truth in the moment, without escaping, without hiding, without diverting and distracting. We have to come to an ability to be so free in the moment that we do not turn away from anything, right? And that we're not creating concepts and intellectualizing what is essentially the truth and using that as some kind of hiding place. It's very easy for this to happen in this kind of unfolding. And particularly if we don't have a wholesome guidance, right? Which can also lead to conceptualizing about non-duality. Non-duality is bad. Non-duality, is about transcendence, and that isn't whole. And what is so important is it's not about the teaching. It's not about the lineage. It's not about anything worldly that explains this truth. There are many, many vehicles. And the vehicles that appear for us and that have appeared for us in our unfoldings are all by grace and have all come forward out of the consciousness that has created exactly the right situations. Nothing in the life has been wrong. No one has led you astray. And everything has been part of the intricate, profound wisdom mandala of the life that is really consciousness guiding itself to freedom. And so one of the ways that we can hide is by having a story that divides something in the life as having been wrong, as having led us astray, as having been at fault in some way. Nothing is at fault. If we are finding fault, we are finding fault with God, with the glory, right? There can also be a hiding place where the mind can say, oh, well, it's all God, it's all love. That's not what we're speaking of. We're speaking of coming to a direct experience for yourself, within yourself, a depthful knowing. The clues are, how happy are you? How free are you? How peaceful are you? How non-reactive are you? How present are you for everything and everyone? How willing are you to face whatever arises without turning away? How willing are you to ask for help when you feel like you can't do it by yourself? How willing are you to be revealed? How open are you in the presence of anything and everything, right? We cannot measure this opening by comparison and trying to use any kind of teaching, any kind of meter to imagine that we're getting somewhere. The measure is the depth of your peace. The measure is the unquestionable, undoubtable knowing of your own wholeness. And that's why we speak about this autonomy in the unfolding. It's not that guidance and support is not fully here. It is. But the guidance and support does not need your power and your allegiance or loyalty, we could even say. It's here openly and freely. And it invites you to constantly question your own experience. It also invites you to constantly bring forward any questions about anything, right? To ask the questions that you feel like you don't know who to ask. Right? It's this invitation to navigate your inner landscape in an aligned truth while feeling completely supported and guided and held. That you're not alone in this, that you're completely companioned in this. But the guidance and companionship isn't asking you to leave the truth of your heart and your deepest knowing ever. We could say, if anything, it's guiding you to be able to recognize the truth of your own heart. It's guiding you to learn to not keep overlooking that, because we learned in our young lives to overlook our own inner voice and to listen to what we were being told and have to conform in order to feel connected, loved, accepted, safe even, right? And what we are inviting here is coming back to the natural wisdom of your own heart, coming back to the natural wisdom of your own self, remembering who you are before you were taught how you had to be in order to survive in the world, right? So there can be a sense of wanting to be guided and supported, wanting to have a teacher. But sometimes that wanting can be a wanting that's entangled in that learned habit to give the power. And there can be an internal feeling to almost want to hand over the power. Show me so I don't have to, right? Tell me how it is so I don't have to. I don't have to know. I don't have to deal with this stuff, right? And there are many beings in our lives that have been very willing to take that power and and play out, right? But that's all our own responsibility. We've created those situations because we found it more comfortable, or we had some kind of conditioned belief that surrender is about surrendering yourself to someone, to something. But it's not true. The surrender is to yourself. But it can also be that we don't really know how to surrender to our own self. There's so much that gets spoken in our gatherings and in infusions. So much. And of course, it's operating in the unseen. It's offering consciousness a way of attuning to its natural resonance, opening in the true substance of what we are. And it also offers the mind consciousness an opportunity to tune in and to have a sense of understanding. But it can mean that so much goes by, it just floats down the river, and that's okay. But it can mean that it can enliven certain things. And there might be a sense inside of hearing something that gets enlivened and maybe not asking the question in the moment, and that it floats away down the river. It could be that there can be a sense of resonating and getting what is being spoken on a certain level, which is on the true level of the naturalness. But it can then bring stuff up. It can bring up a sense of, well, I don't really know how to do that. I don't really know if I'm living that. What about now when I'm really triggered? And really, it's about being able to bring all of this forward if you don't feel that you are able to live this. That our gatherings are not for pretending anything, right? Our gatherings are not about pretend you've got it. Because this can be one of the hiding mechanisms, is stay still, peaceful, close your eyes, and now you're in satsang. But not this satsang, right? This satsang is absolutely committed to a depthful truth that is whole. And it's committed to a depthful truth that is willing to keep evolving and transforming within its whole way of being. That we're not here to just churn out infusions until, the body drops. We're here to meet exactly what is needed. That we're gathered here profoundly. Consciousness has pulled us here in the unseen for this kind of transformation, unfolding, flowering to happen. And there's nothing abstract about it. Listening to infusions can be a hiding place. On the deepest level, it's always of absolute benefit. But the truth is that it doesn't matter what words are spoken, and it doesn't matter the format of our meetings. The mind might have an idea. Oh, if I listen to an infusion and I sit, then I'm going deeper, but it's not necessarily true. It doesn't actually matter what happens. And what is true, what is important, is that we are constantly opening, clarifying, revealing the hiding places. Because the hiding places are what keep us bound. And anything that is arising in the life that has a charge, that has a trigger, that creates division. And we can include in this the places of opinion and judgment. These are all hiding places. These are all protective mechanisms. But I can express this, and you can feel the resonance of truth in it, and it will activate within consciousness a deeper shift in the laws of nature, in the unseen. But there is also this way of having to include all of our functioning. And part of that is being able to ask questions and bring forward the things that are challenging. And so it is so important not to have an idea of how you have to show up. That somehow to show up and not ask questions is holier than asking a question or revealing or moving into an inquiry and bringing something forward. In truth, it is the honesty, the willingness to tell the truth, the willingness to be open, revealed, the willingness to be real, right? That shifts things. This is what we are here for. We're not here for pretense or appearances on any level. We're here because we are brought together to move together, to open and flower into a depth of unquestionable wholeness that includes everything. That yes, where we are not being led by the mind, that we are free of the mind, but what it takes to be free of the mind is to face everything. We have to meet everything, feel everything. How do we know if we're truly feeling? How do we know if we don't actually know how to feel? We know because the nervous system is always the clue. The nervous system is always going to be true. And it's why we speak about the nervous system so much. Because true, deep peace and wholeness is a nervous system that is not stressed, that is deeply peaceful. We could say that it's that the nervous system is this true silence. It's unmoving, it's unwavering, because the nervous system is consciousness. So if we're imagining that we're peaceful, but we've got stress in the nervous system, then this is the clue that there's something here that wants to surface. And it is through surfacing everything that is ready to surface and courageously meeting all of ourself, all that we are, all that we've hidden. And we don't have to go mining and excavating, because in this way we can create imbalance because we're actually more in the mind then. We're overlaying a mental idea of what we want this to look like. There's a wisdom, and part of our unfolding is learning to follow the cues, learning to follow the natural cues that life is offering, and to receive the grace of the natural cues. There is a silence here, a stillness, a peace that is undisturbable, that has never been disturbed. And it is the true nature of all beings. It is not to say that your true self does not include absolutely everything. It does include everything. But we open out of identification with the body-mind to know the transcendent field, to be able to recognize the awareness and that the aware being that we are, that is a part of us, is untouched, undisturbed in the face of everything. And it acts as our safety, because all that has been repressed, suppressed, hidden, it will not open unless there is the safety. So we have to know the safety within our own functioning in order for everything that has been tucked away, pushed away, to be welcomed. Life will bring everything forward in right timing. And it looks like the triggers, the resistances, the recognizable protections, the upsets, the intensity, the judgments, the thoughts and opinions that are dividing, the inferior ego sense patterning, which is putting itself down. I am bad, I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable. And the superior ego, I am better than, I've got this, my way is better, this is truer. Everything is this cue. And really, this unfolding is a depthful willingness to receive the cues. So we don't want to be turning away from any of the cues. Of course, we meet them according to our capacity. So there's no one or anything that is judging you and your capacity, except perhaps your own mind. But this is where we invite, don't continue that conversation. Don't continue the conversation where the mind is speaking to the mind, judging itself, being unkind to itself. And don't continue the conversation where the mind is telling itself, you got this, you're better than them, right? Don't continue the conversation. To stop the conversation is not to bypass it. It's not to transcend away from it. It's just to stop and illuminate as the awareness, the protective, conditioned mechanism to divide. Illuminate the conversation and see that the conversation is the mind with itself. It's an internal process of mind chatter. You can't understand with the mind how your life, your world is projected within the mindscape. can only know this when we come to the true direct experience of it. So there's no point trying to conceptualize. So such an important part of this unfolding is being absolutely honest to yourself about where you are in this unfolding. By not trying to measure, not trying to imagine that you've got somewhere or that there's even somewhere to get to. It's about being so true and free in this moment. Being the openness of the moment that recognizes there's mind stuff, there's mind stuff, there's body stuff. There's also this peaceful sanctuary of awareness of the being. And the depth of the recognition of this is as deep as it has opened to itself within consciousness, and that it has the capacity to evolve within itself, to go before even, we could say, consciousness. But that is all a natural unfolding within the intelligence of our deepest substance. Coming to recognize awareness is not the end of the road by any means. It's the beginning, right? What can happen in this evolution of consciousness is that many beings are opening to be the awareness, recognizing the awareness. And so there are many, many beings that then start sharing satsang and are speaking from their experience. There's something in the play of the world where there's an imagining that if you have an awakening experience, now you have to share satsang. Now you have to somehow be a teacher. The truth is to really guide this takes so much more than that. And of course, this isn't what's happening here, but it is happening a lot. And where the mind is held within itself, it's not able necessarily to recognize. It will at some point, and it doesn't mean that it's wrong. So let us say the reason this is being spoken is not because this is necessarily relevant here, but because there are many beings that receive these sharings that don't necessarily attend the meetings, right? So it is to know that whatever happens and wherever we find ourselves, we are creating that guidance. We're creating everything perfectly. Nothing is out of place. But as we really come to open, we have to recognize that to truly come to freedom and wholeness, everything has to be included. And there can't be any division, any this way's better, that way's better, any we're doing it right, they're doing it wrong. There can't be any of that. Everything has to be seen in the light because the glory is the one and everything is included. So that is why we speak that the mandala of the life has never had any fault in it. We are creating our own dream. We're creating the appearance of our own flowering, but it's not personal. It's not limited. And as soon as we try to land somewhere where, you know, the mind likes to belong and it likes to feel like it's got it, it wants to find its place of belonging, its tribe, and there's a beauty in that. But until the belonging that is found is to yourself, there will always be tendrils. There will always be tendrils. And those tendrils will be the tendrils of the seeker that's trying to find its belonging in things. We have to find the belonging to our own self. And again, this references the autonomy that we're speaking of within our direct experience. We have to be able to measure within our own innate knowing of the being. And the recognition is in the depth of peace, of stillness. And that anything and everything that feels like a disturbance or discordance is an opportunity to reveal something else about ourselves, right? When a contraction comes, it's never about someone else. That contraction is in you because you are holding something about someone. And your work is to find out, what are you holding as a story, as an opinion? It doesn't actually mean anything about anyone else. And the way of truly receiving it is to not believe the story, but to find out if you're holding some kind of opinion or judgment about an apparent other, then that is telling you that there is something within yourself that has not been fully met. And our work is to keep meeting these places. Now, it can take as long as it takes for these certain places to really fully unwind. It can take, minutes, and it can take years, right, for the full unwinding. But once we really come to this work and we're really saying yes to this, it will be a matter of years till we come to freedom, because the whole trajectory is the intelligence trying to free itself. But we have to notice, where are we getting stuck? Where are we still holding a story? Where are we still getting triggered about the same things? Where are the same feelings still arising? And these are the places that we want to be very curious with, because these are the graced opportunities where the subconscious is trying to surface, right? And here we are all about allowing that, meeting it, revealing it, and bringing it forward. What is true is that there can be these conceptual ideas of meeting everything in awareness, meeting everything in love. But if you don't know yourself as awareness, if you don't know the love that you are, then the depth of that meeting will never, ever bring forward the fullness of what is trying to surface. We will only bring things forward to the depth of our openness. And that is why we can need support, guidance, and companionship in bringing this unconscious material forward, because we can need to be held in a depth of presence and a depth of love where there's a safety to even learn to open to our own hidden places, right? We have to learn to be able to hold ourselves. And that is not a skill that we learn intellectually. It's a learning that is unlearning our protection. And we only let go of our protection when we are truly in a resonant recognition of safety, when we are truly in the resonant recognition that we will not be judged, turned away, so these kind of places will only come forward within us when our own knowing of the being is resonating to allow these hidden parts of us to come forward. And even then, we will still need support and companionship to be able to surface deeper places, to become adept within our own ability to hold ourselves. Right? It's like it's like being held almost like in like what might be like a traditional mentorship or apprenticeship or something like this, right? That you're learning to hold yourself. And that's why there has to be this natural recognition of that support, the safety, the guidance that feels like you truly let go in the presence of that, because it's deeper than your mind thinking. It's a deep, resonant recognition of a divine companionship, right? It's like a soul companionship. It can be, there's a term, Anamkara, that speaks to this. It's like a deep, like soul companionship that is about holding the presence and being the presence for a deeper opening to happen, right? And this is what can support us. And so we recognize where we feel that kind of safety that allows us to be witnessed and held. And this isn't only referencing the way that this one supports and guides, but that you will recognize it in each other, right? You will recognize it where there's that feeling of safety. So this is to say that when we speak of the autonomy, it's not saying, oh, you have to be able to do this alone. You've got to bomb through it and just sit by yourself and keep opening. Now, on a certain level, there is a grace to being able to hold yourself, but there is also a grace to being held and supported, guided into the deeper realms, held as you open to the deeper realms, right? It's like maybe when you're learning to swim and you're getting there and you swim away from the edge and you take off your flotation device, but somebody's like holding your belly, under your belly or your hands, right? And then just letting you go. Or the same with a bicycle, that you're riding it without the training wheels, but someone is like right there so that you feel like there's a presence that's holding you, right? But it's to be, part of the unfolding is having the courage to receive support. So much in the early life can be a sense of having to navigate it alone. And then there can be a conditioned hiding place that is, oh, I have to do this alone and only present my shiny face, like only report afterwards, right? Send a postcard. Yep, everything's going fine here. But it's this ability to see that it's about moving through the conditionings. So where we've learned that we have to just do this alone, it's about breaking through the holding places and letting ourselves be heard and and held, and meeting the edges of the places where we have fear, where we don't fully trust. Because it's the things that bring up those feelings that surface this old stress that's stirred, right? And this is where life will offer us these constant opportunities. So much a part of this unfolding is being able to have the ability to recognize the opportunities, to recognize the cues, and not just be kind of just steaming through the day, living in assumption and kind of as the me in the story, but being able to recognize what is happening, being able to see the wisdom and of the play in order to be able to receive it. So there's so many threads to this. And really what is arising is bringing a fine-tuning to the places that need fine-tuning within your lived experience. What are the questions that you don't know who to ask? What are the moments where you feel stuck? What are the things that you feel like you don't quite know how to handle? These are the things that are being invited so that you have the presence while you're learning to swim, right? So that you have this presence, that you're not, in a way, coming to a cue, a moment of possible opening, and then you're shutting down again, right? That you do have the ability to hold yourself, feel the feelings, recognize the sensations in the nervous system, stay present with it, right? Because this is what brings us to wholeness. Opening to be the being the awareness. Yes, that is its own magical trajectory. And we do focus in the deepening of this. But you know, the deepening of this doesn't actually matter what we are speaking about. Because every pointing that is in response to any question is a pointing that is deepening. Every pointing is a deepening. Because every pointing is pointing you back to yourself, is pointing you to the wisdom of your own heart, is bringing the remembrance of how to listen to the cues, how to live truly in intuition, true intuition, where you're not actually listening, you're not someone listening to guidance, because there's not two, that the true intuition is being yourself, being your true self, and moving without the cues of the mind that tell you how you have been conditioned to be, right? This is really important. Moving from a true naturalness, in freedom, in spontaneous openness, without the cues of the mind telling you, do this so that you'll be seen in the right way. Do this so that you don't create a disturbance. Move in this way because that will please that one. Don't move like that because that's not acceptable, right? All of the cues that we're overlaid with, all of these cues. And to move in freedom is to move without those cues. And this is really what we're speaking about, freedom from the mind. That when you're in relational dynamics, because in relational dynamics, these are the places where we got stuck. And so relational dynamics are this incredible opportunity to come to freedom. That you have the freedom to express yourself, that you have the freedom to ask questions, that you have the freedom to question what doesn't feel true for you, right? That you feel safe within yourself, right? In a way, this is a playground for that. It's a playground within our companionships, within the Sangha companionship, to test these places. Because they're going to bring up fear. They're going to bring up the places that don't trust. They're going to bring up the edges, right? And of course, as we spoke, particularly when we come together more in person, but always in everything, it's gonna be here. But this is the grace that when we are committed in the heart to this truth, that we are not going to get ourselves stuck in a place of judgment, projection. We're going to open that, okay, something's arising here, and that we have the support and capacity to move through it all, whether it's within our companionship community, or whether it's, of course, happening within your friends and family communities. You have your own unique unfolding, and it's supported here, right? That to come to a depthful freedom has to include everything, and it has to bring you to a depth of freedom and openness, that you're not just seemingly free in the absolute, but that you can embody that, bring that all the way to the surface, that we could say, you can know you're just a pillowcase full of divine light, but you're living that right on the surface, completely integrated in the human experience. And it means that you're fully engaged, you're fully present, facing everything, showing up, being yourself, asking questions, expressing yourself freely, saying no freely, right? Following a free, intuitive flow of life living itself, that this is your direct experience. And it comes to this through the living of life and the ability to really come to an adeptness at living life, at living life, being life living itself. But it requires a depth of companionship. And let's say that the Sangha and the satsang has to provide that we provide that. This guidance is providing that. For the ones that are ready, for the ones that can feel the resonance of this truth and what is possible in this, right? And of course, everyone that is here present is already in the recognition of that, because you're here and you're called, and we're called together. It's like a divine setup, right? It's a divine orchestration. We're not choosing this. We're not choosing each other. The divine is choosing itself in this configuration in order to support itself. And so our recognition is, hallelujah, there you are, right? There you are. And there's ways and depthful unfoldings that, haven't even started to fully transpire yet. But we are where we are, and we're saying yes to this, right? We have to have relationships that trigger us, and we have to have relationships that feel like utter safety, that we can open through our learned protections and mistrusts and fears and stresses. And all in divine timing, these present themselves. So if you have questions, don't sweep them aside. Don't imagine that you have to show up in a certain way that is an appearance or a pretense, and imagine that that's your satsang face and somehow it's of any benefit to anything. It's not, right? It's about showing up as you are, that we all know the being that is, and we're deepening into the being that is. And sometimes the guidance might focus more upon deepening the stillness, the silence, and the presence of awareness. And sometimes the guidance might focus more upon the inquiry and the ways to come to an adeptness. The greater part of this unfolding is opening to the grace of what life offers. Opening to the depths of the aware being is just a part. And the incredible beauty is that it's all one wholeness. And what deepens us in to the finer and finer realms of consciousness and the refinement is what we meet in life. We have to see that life itself is the grace. And what we move through and meet in life through meeting all of ourself, the mind, the protections, the stresses, this is actually what deepens us in within the consciousness into a purifying flow of our own knowing of consciousness. This is where the recognition of being life, living itself happens. And it's where consciousness sees through itself. Cannot come to a depth of wholeness, which is true freedom, without including everything. And in that we have absolutely unique unfoldings, unique flowerings that are all made of the same intelligence, the same love, the same light. So in essence, it's absolutely all one, undivided. And really our mission is to find the unquestionable knowing of that, the autonomous sovereignty, sovereign knowing of that within our own functioning, without dividing in any way. This is what we're up to.